The internet froze for a split second when Rasheeda Buckner Frost leaned forward, eyes blazing, voice steady, and dropped a line no one saw coming. Kirk never cheated. That was it. 5 words that detonated across timelines, group chats, and comment sections like a thunderclap in the middle of a storm. Fans are shocked. Emotions ran high. And the internet? The internet isn't buying it. Because for years, viewers have watched the highs and lows of Rasheeda's marriage play out in front of millions. Every tear, every side eye, every whispered rumor felt etched into reality TV history. So when Rasheeda stood her ground, defending Kirk Frost with a calm certainty that cut against everything fans thought they knew, it didn't just raise eyebrows, it split the audience right down the middle. Within minutes, reaction videos exploded. Screens lit up with shocked faces and open mouths. Is she serious? Is this denial or devotion? What does she know that we don't? The questions piled up faster than the likes, and suddenly, this wasn't just a statement, it was a war of narratives. On one side, loyal supporters insisting marriage is complicated, that love evolves, that the truth isn't always what the cameras catch. On the other, skeptics armed with receipts, flashbacks, and a memory that never forgets. Behind the scenes, sources whisper that tensions were already boiling. Friends allegedly begged Rasheeda to reconsider going public. Family members were said to be divided, some urging silence, others pushing her to finally set the record straight. Meanwhile, Kirk, normally unbothered, usually smiling, was reportedly quiet, almost too quiet, as if the weight of the moment had finally settled on his shoulders. And here's where the suspense tightens. Was this a calculated move to reclaim the narrative? A deeply personal truth finally spoken out loud? Or the opening act of a much bigger revelation waiting in the wings? Because when someone rewrites a story the world thinks it knows, there's always a cost, and always consequences. As fans refresh their feeds and rewind old episodes, one thing is certain. This declaration didn't close the book. It ripped the cover clean off. And as the comments keep rolling and the debates get louder, one question hangs in the air like unfinished business. If Kirk never cheated, then what really happened? The moment Rasheeda's words hit the air, the room didn't erupt the way everyone expected. Instead, there was a heavy pause, the kind that presses down on your chest and makes you realize something irreversible has just been said. Cameras zoomed in on her face, catching every micro-expression, every flicker of emotion she tried to keep under control. Kirk sat beside her, shoulders stiff, jaw tight, staring straight ahead like he was bracing for impact. Fans watching from home leaned closer to their screens, some shaking their heads, others holding their breath, because this wasn't just a statement. This was Rasheeda challenging years of public belief, years of whispered conversations, explosive arguments, and moments that felt burned into reality TV history. As soon as the clip aired, phones started buzzing. Producers exchanged looks behind the cameras. One whispered, "This is going to blow up," and blow up it did. Within minutes, social media timelines were flooded with reactions. Fans were shocked, emotions ran high, and the comment sections turned into battlegrounds. People replayed old episodes, dissecting every argument Rasheeda and Kirk had ever had. Screenshots resurfaced. Clips of past confrontations were stitched together with dramatic music and bold captions screaming disbelief. The internet wasn't just reacting, it was investigating. Behind closed doors, the mood was anything but calm. Sources close to the situation say Rasheeda had been wrestling with this moment for weeks. Friends had noticed she was quieter than usual, more guarded, more thoughtful. One close friend allegedly told her, "Once you say it out loud, you can't take it back." Rasheeda reportedly nodded, knowing exactly what that meant. She wasn't just defending her husband. She was putting her own credibility, her own story, on the line. Kirk, on the other hand, was said to be pacing the house the night before the statement aired. Those close to him claim he kept saying, "People don't know everything." But when pressed, he didn't explain what that meant. Was it frustration? Guilt? Or confidence that the truth would finally be on his side? Even those closest to him weren't sure. What they did know was that the couple had agreed on one thing. Silence had cost them enough. This time, Rasheeda would speak. As the clip continued to circulate, reactions from the cast began to trickle in. Some stayed neutral, carefully choosing their words, while others couldn't hide their shock. One castmate was overheard saying, "I love Rasheeda, but this feels like rewriting history." Another defended her fiercely, insisting that marriage looks different behind closed doors and that viewers only see what producers choose to show. The family was left divided, not just on screen, but off it too. Rasheeda's mother reportedly called her the same night, voice trembling between concern and frustration. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked. Rasheeda's response was calm but firm. I'm tired of everyone telling my story for me. That sentence alone would later be quoted across fan pages and gossip blogs, framed as either a moment of empowerment or denial, depending on who was posting it. Meanwhile, Kirk's side of the family wasn't celebrating either. A relative allegedly questioned whether this was the right time to make such a bold claim. People don't forget, they warned. And they were right. Fans didn't forget. They remembered every tear Rasheeda cried, every argument where her voice cracked, every moment she looked betrayed. They remembered the anger, the hurt, the public humiliation. So when Rasheeda said Kirk never cheated, it felt to many like she was asking them to erase years of memory. Late-night talk shows picked up the story. Bloggers speculated wildly. Some claimed Rasheeda had new information, something that would soon be revealed, something that would change everything. Others suggested this was about protecting her family, her brand, her children. Because in the world of reality TV, perception is currency, and Rasheeda has always been savvy about her image. As the noise grew louder, Rasheeda retreated inward. Insiders say she avoided social media, letting Kirk handle the storm online. His posts were vague, filled with phrases about loyalty, truth, and strength. Fans dissected those too, reading between every line. If he's innocent, why not say it clearly? One comment read. If he's guilty, why is he letting her take the heat? Another asked. The questions multiplied, but answers remained scarce. Then came the first twist that made everyone pause. An old friend of the couple hinted in an interview that there were misunderstandings that spiraled out of control. The statement was vague, but it was enough to reignite speculation. What misunderstandings? What spirals? Suddenly, people weren't just arguing about cheating. They were questioning timelines, motives, and what really counts as betrayal. Rasheeda, sensing the shift, reportedly told a close confidant, "People think they know everything because they've watched us on TV." She believed there were layers no one had seen, conversations that never made it to air, context that got lost in the edit. But convincing millions of viewers of that would be a battle unlike any she'd faced before. As the days passed, tension between Rasheeda and Kirk became harder to hide. Although united publicly, insiders claim there were heated arguments behind the scenes. Raised voices, slammed doors, long nights where neither of them slept. Defending someone so fiercely forces you to confront every doubt you've ever buried, and Rasheeda was no exception. Was she protecting her truth, or protecting her marriage at any cost? Fans noticed subtle changes too. Kirk's smiles looked forced. Rasheeda's eyes carried a heaviness that makeup couldn't hide. Reaction videos slowed down footage, zooming in, analyzing body language like it was a courtroom trial. Look at how she pauses, one creator said. That's not confidence, that's restraint. Another argued the opposite, claiming Rasheeda had never looked more sure of herself. And just when it seemed like the narrative might settle, a cryptic message appeared online from someone claiming to know the real story. No names, no proof, just a promise that the truth would come out soon. Fans went wild. Was this a clout chaser, or someone with real receipts? Rasheeda reportedly saw the post and went silent, her calm shaken for the first time since making the statement. Kirk, sensing the pressure mounting, finally broke his silence in private conversations, telling those close to him that things were about to get messy. Whatever he meant by that, no one fully understood yet. But one thing was clear. The statement that shocked viewers wasn't the end of the drama. It was only the beginning, and the storm gathering around Rasheeda and Kirk was far from over. The silence didn't last long. The cryptic post spread faster than anyone anticipated, copied across fan pages and gossip accounts, each repost adding new speculation like fuel on an already raging fire. Rasheeda woke up to hundreds of missed notifications, her phone lighting up non-stop on the nightstand. She didn't check them right away. Instead, she sat at the edge of the bed, staring into space, replaying the moment she'd said those words over and over in her head. Kirk never cheated. She whispered it to herself, not for the audience, not for the fans, but like she was testing whether it still felt true when no one else was listening. Kirk watched her from across the room, unsure whether to speak. Insiders say he wanted to reassure her, to tell her everything would be fine, but even he didn't sound convinced when he practiced the words in his head. When he finally broke the silence, his voice was low. "We knew this was coming." Rasheeda didn't respond. That, more than anything, made him uneasy. Because Rasheeda has always been vocal, always ready to argue her point. Her quiet meant something was shifting. Later that day, producers reached out, sensing the opportunity and the risk. They wanted clarity, more footage, more confessionals. Rasheeda agreed to talk, but only on her terms. When the cameras rolled, she sat upright, hands folded, eyes steady. She spoke about loyalty, about how narratives get twisted, about how pain doesn't always equal betrayal. People saw my hurt and assumed they knew the cause, she said. But when pressed for details, she stopped short, drawing a line she refused to cross. Fans dissected that interview frame by frame. Some praised her strength, saying she was reclaiming her story. Others accused her of deflecting, of dancing around the truth. Emotions ran high, and the family was left divided once again, not just emotionally but ideologically. Was Rasheeda a woman standing by her truth, or a wife protecting a man the world had already judged? Meanwhile, whispers from Kirk's past began resurfacing. Old acquaintances popped up, hinting at nights out, questionable behavior, and blurred boundaries. None of it was concrete, but in the court of public opinion, hints are often enough. Rasheeda heard about these rumors through friends, not the internet. One friend allegedly told her, "You need to be ready, because people are going to test you." Rasheeda nodded, but inside, doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest. At home, conversations between Rasheeda and Kirk grew more intense. Voices were raised, then lowered again when the kids were nearby. One argument reportedly ended with Rasheeda asking a question she'd avoided for years. "Is there anything you've never told me?" Kirk hesitated. "Not long, but long enough." That pause echoed louder than any accusation. He eventually answered, insisting there was nothing left in the shadows. But the damage was done. Hesitation has a way of reopening old wounds. Fans sensed the tension even without seeing it. Social media buzzed with theories about cracks in the marriage. "She's defending him, but is he defending her?" one comment asked. Another pointed out how Kirk had yet to make a clear, emotional statement in her support. That imbalance became its own storyline, one that Rasheeda couldn't ignore. Then came another twist. A former associate of Kirk hinted at a secret meeting years ago, claiming it was misunderstood and blown out of proportion. Again, no proof, just enough detail to sound believable. Bloggers ran with it, creating timelines and speculative breakdowns. Rasheeda reportedly saw one of these posts late at night and finally broke down. Tears she'd held back for weeks spilled over, raw and unfiltered. This wasn't about fans anymore. It was about trust. Kirk tried to comfort her, repeating that everything had been handled, that nothing crossed the line. Rasheeda listened, but her mind drifted to the past, to moments she'd brushed off, to instincts she'd silenced. Defending someone publicly requires absolute certainty, and that certainty was starting to feel heavier by the day. Friends urged Rasheeda to take a step back, to protect her peace. "You don't owe anyone an explanation," one said. But Rasheeda felt differently. She believed that silence had allowed others to define her story for too long. This time, she wanted control, even if it meant standing alone. As pressure mounted, Kirk faced his own reckoning. Close sources say he struggled with guilt, not necessarily over cheating, but over the pain his actions, whatever they were, had caused. Intent and impact are rarely the same, and Kirk was beginning to realize that defending himself meant acknowledging that distinction. But admitting that publicly could unravel the narrative Rasheeda was fighting so hard to protect. The couple's inner circle grew tense. Gatherings became awkward. Conversations stopped when Rasheeda entered the room. People didn't know what to say to her anymore. Some avoided the topic entirely, while others offered unsolicited advice. The family was left divided in a new way, split between those who supported Rasheeda's stance and those who quietly questioned it. Fans, meanwhile, refused to let the story die. Reaction videos reached millions of views. Some creators accused Rasheeda of gaslighting herself. Others praised her for redefining betrayal on her own terms. "Maybe cheating isn't just about physical acts," one viral video argued. "Maybe it's about emotional distance, about broken trust." That idea resonated, shifting the conversation slightly but not softening it. Rasheeda noticed that shift. In a private conversation, she reportedly said, "They want a villain, and if it's not him, it's me." The realization stung. Standing by Kirk meant becoming a target herself, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could absorb the blows. Then, just as the narrative threatened to turn fully against her, another unexpected moment occurred. Someone from within their extended circle reached out, offering to tell their side of the story on record. The message was brief but loaded, ending with a warning that not everyone was ready for what they knew. Rasheeda read it twice, heart-pounding. This wasn't just noise anymore. This felt like a crossroads. She showed the message to Kirk. His reaction was immediate and intense. "We don't need this," he said. His urgency only deepened her suspicion. If there was nothing to hide, why fear another voice entering the conversation? That question lingered between them, unanswered, as the storm around their marriage continued to grow, pulling them closer to a moment neither of them could avoid. Rasheeda didn't sleep that night. The message replayed in her mind like a warning siren, growing louder with every passing hour. When morning came, she felt heavier, like she was carrying not just her own doubts but the weight of everyone else's expectations. Kirk tried to act normal, joking with the kids, scrolling through his phone like nothing was wrong, but Rasheeda saw through it. The tension clung to him, tight in his shoulders, sharp in the way he avoided her eyes. By midday, the internet had found a new angle. Fans began speculating that Rasheeda knew more than she was letting on, that her statement wasn't denial but strategy. She's protecting something bigger, one viral post claimed. Others insisted she was being manipulated, emotionally cornered into defending a version of reality that benefited everyone except her. Emotions ran high, and once again, the family was left divided, not just by opinion but by fear of what might come next. Behind the scenes, producers pushed harder. They wanted answers, confrontation, tears. They wanted the moment Rasheeda would finally crack. During a private meeting, one producer reportedly asked, "What happens if someone else tells their story?" Rasheeda looked at them for a long moment before responding. "Then people will hear it," she said. Her calm unsettled the room. They couldn't tell if she was prepared or resigned. Kirk wasn't as composed. Friends say he began calling people from his past, trying to control the narrative before it escaped him completely. Some calls went unanswered, others ended abruptly. The more he tried to contain the situation, the more it seemed to slip through his fingers. Whispers grew louder, details sharper, stories more confident, even without proof. At home, Rasheeda finally confronted him about the message. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She simply asked who it could be. Kirk shrugged it off, claiming it was someone chasing attention. But his voice wavered, just slightly, and Rasheeda noticed. She always noticed. "If it's nothing," she said quietly. "Why are you scared?" Kirk didn't have an answer. Silence filled the space between them, thick and suffocating. Fans picked up on the shift almost immediately. Rasheeda's energy on camera changed. She was still strong, still articulate, but there was a sadness behind her words now, a fatigue that no amount of confidence could hide. Reaction videos slowed her expressions down, zooming in on her eyes. "She looks tired," one fan said. "Like someone who's been carrying a secret for too long." The narrative began to splinter. Some fans doubled down on their support, insisting Rasheeda didn't owe anyone an explanation. Others grew harsher, accusing her of betraying viewers who had stood by her during her lowest moments. "We cried with her," one comment read. "Now she's telling us we were wrong?" The sense of betrayal shifted, no longer just about Kirk, but about trust between Rasheeda and her audience. Friends tried to intervene, urging Rasheeda to protect herself. One close confidant reportedly told her, "Even if he didn't cheat, he hurt you, and that matters." That distinction struck a nerve. Rasheeda had spent so long defending the word cheat that she'd stopped talking about pain. Maybe that was the real issue. Maybe the argument had never been about facts, but about feelings that never fully healed. Meanwhile, Kirk's frustration turned inward. Sources say he felt trapped, caught between his wife's loyalty and the public's suspicion. He insisted that his mistakes had been exaggerated, that moments of poor judgment were turned into lifelong labels. But he struggled to articulate that without sounding defensive. Every attempt to explain only seemed to raise more questions. Then came another twist, one no one saw coming. A voice note began circulating online, allegedly recorded years ago, hinting at emotional intimacy that crossed boundaries. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough. Fans went into overdrive. Timelines were built, theories refined. Rasheeda heard the clip and froze. This wasn't just rumor anymore. This was something tangible, something she couldn't ignore. Kirk denied it immediately, claiming it was taken out of context, that it meant nothing. Rasheeda wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. But belief without certainty is fragile, and hers was cracking. She asked him again if there was anything else she needed to know. Again, he said no. Again, that pause haunted her. The family felt the strain. Gatherings became tense. Conversations avoided the elephant in the room until someone inevitably brought it up. Some relatives supported Rasheeda unconditionally, praising her strength. Others quietly questioned whether standing by Kirk was costing her more than it was worth. The family was left divided, lines drawn not in anger but in concern. Fans began framing Rasheeda's statement in a new light. Maybe she wasn't saying nothing happened. Maybe she was saying it wasn't cheating by her definition. That idea sparked heated debates. What counts as betrayal? Who gets to define it? Rasheeda's words had unintentionally opened a much bigger conversation, one that reflected back on her in ways she never anticipated. Late one night, Rasheeda sat alone, scrolling through messages from strangers. Some thanked her for showing loyalty. Others begged her to choose herself. One message stood out. What if the truth doesn't make you look strong, but it sets you free? She stared at it for a long time. Freedom suddenly felt more appealing than being right. Kirk sensed the distance growing. He tried harder, planned gestures, spoke about their future. But Rasheeda was listening differently now. She wasn't just hearing his words, she was measuring them against years of emotion she'd pushed aside. Defending him had become exhausting, and she was starting to wonder who was defending her. As pressure built, the person behind the cryptic message resurfaced, this time asking for a meeting. Rasheeda reflected on everything that had led her here. The statement, the backlash, the doubt. She knew that whatever she chose next would change everything. And as she considered whether to hear another version of the story, one truth became impossible to ignore. The declaration that shocked viewers had not ended the drama. It had stripped away the distractions, leaving her face to face with the one question she could no longer avoid. What was she willing to accept in the name of love? Rasheeda agreed to the meeting without telling anyone at first. Not Kirk, not producers, not even her closest friend. Something inside her needed to hear the words directly, without filters, without commentary, without the noise of the internet shaping the meaning before she could process it herself. The location was neutral, quiet, a place where no one would recognize her. When she arrived, her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if it would give her away. The person waiting for her looked nervous, eyes darting around the room. This wasn't the confident energy of someone chasing clout. This was hesitation, fear, and something that looked a lot like guilt. Rasheeda sat down slowly, her posture composed even though her hands trembled slightly. Say what you came to say, she told them. No anger, no tears, just readiness. The story that followed wasn't explosive in the way fans expected. There was no dramatic confession of physical cheating, no hotel rooms or secret babies. Instead, it was a slow unraveling of moments. Late-night calls, emotional dependence, conversations that crossed lines without ever labeling themselves as affairs. The person insisted nothing physical happened, but admitted that boundaries were blurred, trust was tested, and silence allowed misunderstandings to grow into something much bigger. Rasheeda listened without interrupting. Every word landed heavy. This was the gray area she'd been avoiding, the space between innocence and betrayal. When the story ended, she asked one question. Did Kirk ever tell me the full truth? The pause that followed felt endless. Not completely, the person finally said. Rasheeda walked out without another word. The drive home felt longer than usual. Streetlights blurred past as her thoughts raced. Kirk never cheated. She'd said it with conviction. And maybe, technically, it was true. But the truth she was facing now didn't feel like a victory. It felt like realization. When she got home, Kirk was waiting. He knew something had shifted the moment she walked through the door. Her energy was different, quieter, heavier. You met with them, didn't you? He asked. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at him and said, I needed to know what I was defending. The argument that followed was unlike any they'd had before. No yelling, no dramatic exits, just raw honesty spilling out in fragments. Rasheeda talked about the humiliation she'd felt over the years, the way defending him had slowly turned into silencing herself. Kirk admitted that he'd minimized things, convincing himself that if nothing physical happened, it didn't count. Hearing it out loud made it sound smaller than it felt. Emotions ran high, but something else was happening too. Clarity. For the first time, they weren't arguing about what the public thought. They were confronting what they'd avoided privately. Rasheeda told him, you let me look foolish out there. Kirk didn't argue. He couldn't. Word of the meeting didn't stay secret for long. Someone talked. They always do. Fans woke up to new rumors, new theories, new confidence that something was about to break. Reaction videos framed Rasheeda as a woman on the brink of revelation. She's about to change the story, one creator said. Another insisted she was still in denial. The internet split once again, louder than before. Producers sensed it too. They pushed for another sit-down, another chance to capture the fallout. Rasheeda agreed, but this time, her approach was different. She didn't defend. She didn't deny. She spoke carefully, choosing words that acknowledged pain without feeding speculation. Truth isn't always simple, she said. And healing doesn't come with a headline. Fans didn't know what to do with that. It wasn't the dramatic confession they craved, nor was it the firm denial that sparked outrage. It lived somewhere in between, uncomfortable and unresolved. Some praised her maturity. Others accused her of dodging accountability. The family was left divided yet again, unsure whether to support her silence or push her to speak more plainly. Kirk struggled with the shift. Defending himself had always been easier than sitting with the impact of his choices. He felt exposed, not by a scandal, but by the emotional truth he'd ignored. Friends noticed he was quieter, less defensive, more reflective. Some wondered if this was growth or simply fear of losing everything. At home, the dynamic changed. Rasheeda stopped carrying the narrative on her back. She no longer corrected rumors or engaged with speculation. Kirk noticed and panicked. "People are going to think the worst," he said. Rasheeda's response was calm. "They already do." Fans picked up on her detachment. Posts analyzed her silence, interpreting it as strength or surrender depending on perspective. The phrase "Kirk never cheated" began to feel smaller, less central, almost irrelevant compared to the larger question emerging. What does loyalty cost, and who pays the price? Then another unexpected development hit. Someone close to the situation publicly challenged the idea that emotional boundaries don't matter. They spoke about how intent doesn't erase impact, how pain doesn't require a label to be valid. The statement went viral. Many fans saw it as indirect support for Rasheeda, reframing her experience without contradicting her words. Rasheeda read the reactions quietly. She didn't feel vindicated, she felt seen. That mattered more. For the first time since making the statement that shocked viewers, she wasn't focused on being believed. She was focused on being honest with herself. Kirk tried to reconnect, to reassure her that their marriage could move forward. Rasheeda didn't shut him out, but she didn't rush either. Trust, once stretched thin, doesn't snap back easily. It has to be rebuilt, piece by piece, without spectacle. The internet, however, thrives on spectacle. Fans demanded answers, ultimatums, closure. Stay or leave, they insisted, as if healing were a binary choice. Rasheeda resisted that pressure. She understood now that choosing herself didn't always mean walking away. Sometimes it meant redefining the rules. As days passed, the narrative shifted again. Instead of asking whether Kirk cheated, fans began asking whether Rasheeda had been betrayed in ways that mattered just as much. The conversation grew more nuanced, less vicious, though still intense. Emotions ran high, but so did empathy. Rasheeda felt the shift and exhaled. She hadn't planned to start a movement or change a conversation. She'd only wanted to tell her truth. But truths have a way of expanding once released into the world. Still, unresolved tension lingered. The meeting, the admissions, the silence, all pointed toward a reckoning that hadn't fully arrived yet. Rasheeda knew another decision was coming, one that would define not just her marriage, but her relationship with the public she'd shared so much of her life with. And as she stood at that edge, one thing was certain. The story was no longer about convincing the internet. It was about deciding what she could live with when the cameras finally turned off. And now it's your turn, because stories like this don't end when the screen goes dark, they live on in the conversations we have after. You've watched the emotions rise, you've seen the doubts surface, and you've felt the tension that refuses to disappear. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided, but the biggest question still hangs in the air, unanswered and uncomfortable. Where do you stand? Do you believe Rasheeda when she says Kirk never cheated, or do you think the truth is more complicated than a single sentence could ever explain? Was this loyalty at its strongest, or denial dressed up as strength? And if emotional boundaries were crossed, does that change everything, or does it prove that betrayal isn't always defined the same way for everyone? As you sit with that, think about how many times you've seen relationships judged from the outside. How often have you formed an opinion based on fragments, edits, or moments taken out of context? This story forces you to look deeper, to ask yourself whether truth is always loud, or if sometimes it's quiet, layered, and messy. Rasheeda didn't just challenge the internet, she challenged the way we consume pain as entertainment. Now we want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Rasheeda reclaimed her narrative, or did she sacrifice too much to protect her marriage? If you were in her position, would you have spoken up, stayed silent, or walked away entirely? Your perspective matters, and this community thrives on real conversation, not just headlines. If this story made you pause, if it made you question what you thought you knew, make sure you hit that like button so more people can join the discussion. Liking the video helps keep these conversations alive and pushes this story to others who might see it differently than you do. And don't forget to subscribe, because this drama isn't over. There are always new twists, new reactions, and new truths waiting to surface, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Turn on your notifications so you're the first to know when the next chapter drops. Because in stories like this, silence never lasts, and the next revelation is always closer than it seems. Share this video with someone who has strong opinions, someone who loves reality TV drama, or someone who believes there are always two sides to every story. Most importantly, keep the conversation respectful. People involved are real, emotions are real, and behind every headline is a human story. Debate passionately, disagree loudly if you must, but remember why stories like this resonate in the first place. They reflect our own fears, loyalties, and limits. So tell us, do you think this marriage survives the storm, or has the damage already been done? Was this the beginning of healing, or just another chapter of denial? Scroll down, type it out, and let your voice be heard. Because the internet may not be buying it, but your opinion is what keeps this story alive.